I welcome you to this project where we are going to build AI content generator using Gemini AI with React and Express.js. My name is Emmanuel, a full-stack web developer and also an instructor on Udemy with over 9 courses, at the same time having my personal coding bootcamp school, and I'll be your guide as we go through this project. So let's see the final project that we are going to build using this AI, and that is Gemini AI content generator. And over here I can issue any command, and indeed we got the content. So the question is, what is Gemini AI? Gemini AI is a family of multimodal large language models developed by Google DeepMind, designed to serve as the successor to previous models such as Lambda and Palm 2. Announced on December 2023, and Gemini comprises 3 main versions: Gemini Ultra, Gemini Pro, and Gemini Nano. Gemini AI is positioned as a competitor to OpenAI's GPT-4. Let's see the features when it comes to Gemini AI. One is multimodal capabilities, versatility and flexibility, and also state-of-the-art performance. Let's get into code to build this application, and for me, I'm going to use VS Code as my coding editor. We are going to focus on the backend. I'm going to create a folder called Backend. Before we continue, let's read more about the documentation. If you search for Gemini AI API and then click on the first search result, or better still, you can go to ai.google.dev. And here it says that build with Gemini. And all what we need is to get the API key, and also we can read more about the API documentation. If you scroll down, it says that integrate Gemini into your app with the API. And we can integrate using Python, Android, Flutter, Go, Node.js, and others. We are going to use with Node.js. So all what we need is to get the API key. So click on Get API Key. And before you continue, make sure to log in using your Google account. And here we can interact with this model by issuing some prompt, for example, hi. And here we can select the version of the model. Alright, so let's go ahead and then create the API key. So click on this. And here I think I have some unsaved documents. So let me click OK. And now let me click on the API key. And this is my API key. So copy that. And now I can close it. And back to my project, I'm going to create App.js and then paste the key here, and let's continue. Next step is that we have to read more about this documentation by clicking on the documentation here. And it says that get started with the Gemini AI, and here let's select the platform. We are going to use it with Node.js, so click on Node.js. And here, let's look at the steps. Step number 1 is we have to set up our project, including our API key. We are done with that. And next step is that we are going to generate text from text-only input. Or we can use the multimodal or built-in turn conversation like chat, or we can use streaming for faster interactions. But for this project, we are going to use generate text from the text-only input. So if you scroll down here, first step is that we have to install the SDK, and this is a logic for implementing that. If you scroll down here, we have the complete code. Alright, so let's go ahead and then install this. And back to my application, let me open it in the terminal. And first step is that I have to initialize my project as npm. And let's install the generative AI. And let's install Express and also course and .env for securing our API keys. Alright, so let's see. Let's go ahead and then copy the entire of this code. Copy that and paste it here. And over here, all what we need is to replace our API key with the process.env.api key, or better still, let's create the .env file. And then I'm gonna have the variable as API key, which is equal to our API key, which is this. Alright, so it means that we have to require the .env file as require, and on that we're gonna use config to get the value. Let's see what this code means. First step is that we are requiring the Google Generative AI, and here we are creating instance of the Google Generative AI by passing in our keys. So this is what we call authentication, meaning that we are authorizing this application using our API keys. And this is a function for generating the content. So here we are using the text only input. So on that we have a method called getGenerative and the model here is called Gemini Pro, or you can use Nano or other model. And this is a prompt which says that write a story about a magic backpack. And here we are passing in the prompt into the model, and here is the result from the API or the model. So now let's run this application, which is, I'm gonna use Node and the name of the file as app. And there we go, we got the result in our terminal as that. So instead of dumping the content in the terminal, we are going to display it on the UI using a browser. And also we want the user to write any content or any prompt than to use this static text. This is where we're going to modify this function to use route. So it means that we have to create our express route as const as that, and let's create instance of express. And here is going to be as const app is equal to express as a function call. So we are going to convert this one to use a route or endpoint. So let me remove this, and here I will say start the server. And let's have our middlewares as middlewares, and the first one is going to be the middleware to pass incoming JSON data as express.json as a function call. Alright, so here we're going to have the route to generate the content as generate. So let's bring in try and catch, and here I'm going to select the function and then place it inside the try here. So here remove the function name, likewise this. So here all what we're going to do is that we are going to allow the user to provide any prompt than to use this static text. So here I'm going to remove that, and then here I will say const let the structure the prompt from the rec.body, and here I will say prompt. And that is it. Remember, we are passing the prompt into the model. And next step is that we have to send as res.send and then send the text. We don't want to send JSON data. And then here I will say res.status, and let's log the error here. And that is it. So let's run this application or our server. Shut down, and instead of using node MERN, we are going to use node-watch and then the name of the file as app.js. With this one we don't have to install node MERN again, and let's see. Alright, server is running, and then let's go ahead and make our first request. For this I'm going to use what is called tender client. If you don't have it, search for tender client, which is this. This is similar to Postman, but for this, we can do it right inside our Visual Studio Code. So let's click on the new request. And then here, the endpoint is going to be http://localhost, then 8080. And then the endpoint here is called generate. And then in the body here, we are going to provide JSON data as prompt, and then I will say in JavaScript, and let's see, supposed to be post method, and we got the result from the model or from Gemini. Awesome. So it means that our API is working. All right, we can add more logics into our server or API, but for this, let's make it simple by just hitting this endpoint. We can implement something like authentication or the number of requests. So now that we have the API being working, let's get back to front end and then work on that. So here, I'm going to create one folder called front end or client. And then I'm going to use Vite to generate my React application. So click on get started, or you can use create React app. And here, copy the snippet either to use npm, yarn, pnpm, or ban. So click on that. And then back to the terminal, let me open this particular folder. And then here, I'm going to paste that and enter. It says that my project name, but since I have the folder name as front end, I'm going to use period. And then let me select React and then JavaScript. Next step is that npm I to install all the dependencies. For this, we are going to use what is called React Query to manage server states or to make HTTP requests to our backend. The reason why I'm going to use this library is that it is going to make our life easier. For example, if you want to implement loading, error, success, caching, and pagination, this package or library is going to make our life easier. But for this project, we're going to use it in the minimal way. But in case you want to learn more about React Query, then you can check my React Query course. So click on the latest. And here, click on the read doc. And click on the installation. And then copy this snippet back to our front end. Paste that, and that is npm I or install at tanstack/react-query. And you're going to connect this one with our application. So click on the quick start. And this is all what we need to wrap React Query with our application. So let's get back to our main root. That is the front end, and that is inside the main.jsx. So this is where we're going to wrap or configure our application to use React Query. First step is let's import what we need from at tanstack. And then here we need what is called query client, and then query client provider. And then here const query client is equal to new query client. And here we're going to wrap our application using the provider, and then it takes in one prop, and that is the client, and then pass in the query client instance, and let's place our app inside, and that is it. So let's run this application by using npm run dev. Alright, so let me copy this URL and then replace with this one. Perfect. We have fresh React application. So let's continue. I'm going to remove the default CSS, and that is the index.css, and also in the app, which is this one. Let me remove this and let's see what we have. Perfect. And also everything inside the app.csx. I'm going to have this, also remove this. Alright, so we are going to implement our form handling and also making the request to the backend. And to use React query to make the request, we're going to use what is called use mutation. It is a hook that is used to make HTTP requests either post, put, or delete. So first of all, we're going to have a function that is going to make the request. And that function must return what is called promise. But before that, we're going to install our HTTP client, in this case Axios. You can use fetch, but I prefer to use Axios as npmi Axios. Alright, so let's continue and then require Axios here, supposed to be in the app instead. Yeah, this place. And then here, function that must return a promise. And this is going to use with use mutation from React query. So let's bring in use mutation. The auto import is fine, which is this. So here, the function going to be as, and then in here, going to assign to response equal to await axios.post. And the endpoint here is going to be our backend API, in this case, this one. Replace or paste it here as that. Alright, and here, we're going to return what is called promise as res.json or data instead. Anytime you return a value from async await logic, it means that you are returning a promise. Perfect. In the component here, we're going to have the internal state using the useState hook, and here we're going to have the prompt. First of all, I will have the prompt and then set prompt. This is for the form management as that. And let's go ahead and then have the form. I'm going to use fragment or just a div. And then here, I'm going to provide a class called app. Don't worry, I'll provide the CSS for you. And also the header. And I will say Gemini AI content generator. And then for P as enter a prompt and let Gemini AI craft a unique content for you. And let's handle the form as that. And here we're going to have a class name for the form as app-form. And let's have a label, and I will say enter your prompt. And then going to have the input field. It's going to be of type text, and then the value here is going to be the prompt in the state, supposed to be prompt. And then on change is going to be arrow function here, and we have access to the event. And then we're going to call the set prompt and pass in event.target.value. Then placeholder is going to be write a content about. Then the class name is going to be app-input. And gonna have a button as generate content, and provide a class called app-button, and the type here is going to be submit. Alright, so let's finish up. What has left is the submit handler, and also the logic for the mutation. This one's supposed to be up here. So here, this is how I'm going to use the mutation as mutation. You can assign to any variable of your choice by using use mutation, a function call, and then the object. I'm going to specify these properties as mutation function, and the function is this one. Remember, the function for the use mutation must return a promise as we have done here. And then here as make the request, comma here, and then mutation key. The value for the mutation key is going to be used by React query behind the scene for optimization and other logics. So here you can use any key of your choice, for example, Gemini. But the key must be descriptive as Gemini AI request. Alright, and next step is that let's have the handler as const submit handler, which is equal to, and then we're gonna call the mutation. On that we have a method called mutate, and it means that we're gonna pass in what we want to send to the API, and here we're gonna pass in the prompt. In this case, the one from the state, which is where I think I'm writing the logic outside the component, so make sure to write it inside the component as that. So here we're gonna pass in the prompt. Perfect. Now let's bind or pass the onSubmit to this by saying handle submit or submit handler, and that is it. So let's log what will come back from the request as log, which is the mutation over here. Let me see. Yeah, mutation here. This is going to hold all the values or the properties about our response, either success, loading, or error. So let's log that, which is this. If I do it, definitely we're going to face some error, but don't worry. We will come back and then fix it. So let's run the front end. Make sure that your back end is also running, and then refresh. If I say that write a content about, let me say, what is CSS, generate, and let's check the console, and we got cause error. So this means that we are trying to access our backend application using unknown front-end application. So we have to tell our backend that, hey backend, this front end is from us. So allow it to access the endpoint or resources in our backend. And remember, we have already installed what is called cause package in the previous video, in this case, which is this. So we are going to pass this one as a middleware, and then up here, let's require the package as cause, and then before this, or in the middlewares here, I will say const cause options, which is equal to object, and then specify the origin. It's going to be array of the front end URLs. So here I want this URL, and then paste that. Make sure you don't have any / comma here, and then also paste that. Sometimes the port is 73. All right, and then lastly is that we're gonna call app.use, and then bring in the course, and then pass in the course options. And that is it with this one. Let's try out. Well, I forgot this one, and that is in the app here. Upon creating the handler for making the request, we have to accept the prompt as that. So it means that as a second argument, we're gonna pass in the prompt. We are done with that. As you can see, we have the mutation values. For example, data is undefined, error, and is idle, pending, and others. Now let me clear it, and if I say what is CSS, let's see. And as you can see, we got the result. If you check on the data, we have the response from Gemini, and the error is now is pending is false. If you look at the first one, we have is loading, and that is pending being set to true, and the success here is false. But the final one, we have status being success, and its success here is true. Have you seen how awesome React query is? So we can base on this one to display some loading or error. So below the button here, I'm gonna have a section for displaying the loadings and error. So I will say class name here is gonna be app-response. I'll provide the CSS for you. And here remember we have mutation dot, we have these properties. For example, is error, is paused, is pending, which is loading, is success. So here, let's check for is pending, and that is loading. In case it is loading, then we're going to display p tag by saying that generating your content. And in case we have error, in this case is error, and we have the value as error supposed to be mutation dot error dot message. And in case we have success, then we're going to display the result as a success, and then it's going to be as data, supposed to be dot data here. Awesome. So, and there we go, we have it as that. Let me go ahead and then provide the CSS for you. I'm going to place it or replace with the app.css, and then in the app here, so here as, and then it is called app.css, and this is what we have. Alright, think our class names are messing up. Don't worry, I'll provide you with the final source code. So here, if I say that, and we got generating your content, and we got the result. If I say that, write a story about success, and there we go. Alright, so here ends this project.